Hi, this is Carolyn Ofer Moselle, and welcome to the podcast, Use Your Powers for Good. I'm really glad that you are here. This is a podcast to inspire leaders, managers, and supervisors to use their powers for good to put more kindness in the world. As leaders, it's important to find ways to reduce our stress, find balance, and create a positive workplace culture by improving the tools in our toolbox. Today's guest is going to do just that. Jennifer Martineau is the president and founder of Leap and Inspire Global LLC, an organization focused on helping individuals and organizations achieve their full potential through coaching, consulting, and development. Jennifer is going to talk to us today about the importance of a more equitable and inclusive workplace culture and ways to create it. Welcome, Jennifer. We are so glad that you are here.
Thank you, Carolyn. I'm happy to be here with you.
Can you tell us about your company and its work in the equity, diversity, and inclusion space?
Sure. Yeah, so we formed just last year, just in June last year. And after having left a 26-year plus career at this wonderful organization, the Center for Creative Leadership, and deciding to go out on my own to really focus my time and attention to developing women and to developing other underrepresented groups, and to do so through working directly with those leaders as well as with organizations that need to create the kind of cultures that are equitable and inclusive. So, what we do, as you mentioned, is focused through coaching and consulting and development, and the way that I come at it is that organizations really are at their best when they have a wide variety of people with a diversity of experiences contributing to the decisions and the strategies and so forth of the organization. And yet many organizations get caught in this trap that they have been for generations of of um, of narrowing the pipeline of potential leaders as you move from entry level through mid and senior up to the executive levels. There's that narrowing of the pipeline is not because there is something incompatible
Mhm.
with women, people of color, people with disabilities, LGBTQ community, etc. It's not because they're missing something or lacking something that would make them strong, effective leaders. It's that the organizations are not really inviting them, including them, developing them in a way that they continue to develop through that pipeline and then become senior leaders. And just as an example, I pulled some data today. We continue to track the rise of women CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. It's now at 8.2%, which, that's growth, right? It was at 6 point
Yeah.
something percent last year at one point. With Roz Brewer's appointment to the CEO of Walgreens, it hit 8.2%. Now that's better, but it's only 8.2%
Right.
of those in Fortune 500 are women. Or if you look at it through the lens of board appointees, in January, 39.5% of board appointees were women, and 25.5% of those women self-identified as women of color. But you're still only talking about 12.5% of board members in public companies being women. So
Right.
we still have a gap. And so, the mission of Leap and Inspire Global is to help the individual leaders as well as the organizations to change that story.
That's awesome. That's really, when I hear those numbers, even though, you, especially in the last, several months, you've seen companies be more intentional about
Mhm.
their appointments of women and people of color, but the numbers are still just really astounding in
Right.
the global sense of that whole um, situation. And so
Yeah.
I'm glad that you are focusing on that work and helping organizations to understand the power behind power, of all of being inclusive and diversifying their teams and their leadership. And so, speaking of leaders, what type of support do you find that they need in order to be successful in this evolving space, from an organization's perspective as well as from an individual perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, at the outset, some of the support that leaders need is to, whether they are individual leaders or responsible for large parts of an organization, they need to understand that it's okay to know that they don't know everything they should
Mhm.
know. You know, and so to be able to admit and know that it's okay to admit that I'm not sure what needs to happen and I'm ready to learn,
Mhm.
and not feeling persecuted for that. The fact is we've been this way around the world and in our country for, as I said, generations, and the only way we change that is for people to feel comfortable learning and trying out new approaches, and sometimes failing at those new approaches, but they're trying out of positive intent. And so that, the first thing I think they need is that support to know that it's okay to be where you are, as long as what you're trying to do is to make things better for your workforce. The
So,
next thing that, oh, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say that the next thing then, once that readiness is there, is understanding. This is particularly true for leaders at more senior levels. Understanding what's happening in their organization. What are the
Mhm.
policies and the practices that are in place? What is the sort of the culture, the way we do things around here? What's going on there that is creating a sense of belonging for all people and all leaders, and what's going on that is not, that's telling people, whether directly or indirectly, these leadership roles aren't for you. And
Mm,
so, don't worry about developing yourself in that way, because it's really for other people,
right.
and not people in your mold. So they need to understand what's there so that they can then start to work on it.
Yeah, and I find that, and because I've done a little bit of work, it was I say a little bit, but it was like really intense, with the city of Baltimore when we were setting up the infrastructure for complying with the new law around creating more um, equity in the on the inside of city government. So I
Mhm.
did find that, setting up that infrastructure was really a real sensitive subject, because it was setting it up with all of the city agencies. So you had the leadership, and then you had the middle management, and then you had, the other line staff that really needed to understand, like, what everyone needed to. There was a lot of different levels of understanding that were needed.
Yes. Yeah,
And
absolutely. And it takes time, which you
mhm,
found, right? Even if the intent is there, the good
yes,
intent, you're talking about culture change and system change, and that takes a lot of time. We didn't get there overnight,
mhm,
and it's going to take, an organization usually around, you know, 3 years or so to
mhm,
really um, do a comprehensive organizational transformation.
yes, yes. And so I know that, like, with leaders, the people in leadership who are responsible for, kind of doing the engagement and the communication around bringing up the other team members. So
Mhm.
what do you find that they are saying about how to bring on and get the support they need from their mid managers and supervisors, and then, line staff, etc.
Yeah, it's I don't want to say it's a top-down process, because it transformation really does happen with everyone all together. However, people are often looking to their leaders,
Hmm.
and whether that means the people at the very top of the organization or the people just above them, they're looking for guidance.
Mhm.
And so some of what it takes on the part of leaders who are helping their team members to create more equitable and inclusive cultures is those leaders need to do their own work first.
Mhm.
And they need to work through some of the difficult conversations that they'll have with their peers, with others around them, before they can then
Mhm.
help their team members to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And so they're doing it together, right? But they're just a step or two ahead of their team members, so that they can work with their team members through having that experience themselves. And once you've experienced yourself going through a process, then you're better able to help other people go through that process.
That's true. And you can kind of get your questions answered, and so that
Mhm.
if those same questions come up, then you have an answer to the questions that the teams that you lead
Right.
will likely have. And so I was thinking about what you said about how it's not from the top down, and because I think that's really important to understand that in order to become diverse and inclusive, you need
Mhm.
to include everyone. And I think,
Yeah.
sometimes that has been, from my experience, some of the area that is a little challenging because of, especially if you have a person that's always done things the same, but is trying to be a team player in a sense, um, um, because they do understand the value of creating an inclusive environment. But
Yeah.
so, how have you found that leaders have been inclusive of all levels that may impact decisions that they have to make and including that creating an inclusive environment?
Well, let me give an example. There's an organization that I'm working with, and the sponsors of the initiative are the senior level leaders in the organization. And so they are committed to the organizational transformation that needs to happen, but they also know that that the mindset shifts and the practice shifts that need to happen are all throughout the organization. And so as they design the initiative with me, what we've done is we have put together stakeholder groups that cross the levels of the organization. And so, and they're representative of the organization, but it's not the entire organization. So we're going to go through a phased process where we're working with these stakeholder groups who are then going to be leading the rest of their peers
Mhm.
through a process of development. And so it's sort of a three, maybe even a four tier, if you will, but really working almost simultaneously
Mhm.
with each other. And so the structure of that is going to help them. One of the things that they know is important is to get the engagement of people across the organization early to understand what's going on and why it's happening.
Mhm.
And so it's not only about educating the people across the organization about equity and inclusion and how to achieve those, but it's also hearing from them what's happening well, what's getting in the way, and what do they think
Mhm.
can be done about it. So they're becoming part of the solution as
Mhm.
they're learning about the work that needs to be done. And then as they are, those teams then will come up with some strategies and some action items, and they will then bring the rest of the organization into it,
Mhm.
and be leaders with their peers in that sense. So I think that sort of that's a sort of a representative model,
Mhm.
if you will, where again it's still led by the very senior levels,
Mhm.
but they are not getting too far out in front of the rest of the organization.
So, and tell me this. I know that in the work that I did around this, I found that so many people had so many definitions about what equity,
Yeah.
inclusion, and diversity were. You know, you ask 10 people, you get 10 answers. So how do you get everyone on the same page about what that is and the definition of those terms?
Yeah, and there's all sorts of metaphors, and I think people find the metaphors helpful.
Mhm.
One that I particularly like in terms of equity, so I start there with the metaphor, is if you imagine people of all sizes and physical capabilities um, wanting to go on a bicycle ride together, a bike ride together. And you say, great. So here are the bikes, and they're all the same size, and they happen to fit, sort of the average size person in the group. But the very tall person, the very short person, the person without strong use of their legs uh, can't use that same model. And so that's not equity. Equity is when they each have a model of that bicycle, tricycle, whatever it is, or the cycles that are pedaled, with your hands. Um, they each have what worked for them so that they can go on that bike ride together. And so equity is helping each person to have the resources they need to accomplish their full potential. And then inclusion is that act of saying, we're going to do this together. So we're going to figure out what it takes for all of us to be on this bike ride together. Now, where do you want to go? Do you want to, we're going to figure out together if it's going to be a flat ride or if there are going to be hills, because we need to understand the needs of everybody and how you feel most recognized and valued for your needs and your wants. And diversity is when that bike ride turns into a wonderful array of different kinds of people who
Mhm.
were there because it was equitable and inclusive. And so, I do put the emphasis on equity first and then inclusion and diversity, because diversity is the outcome
Right.
of when we create those equitable and inclusive cultures.
Yes, thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Um, Also, can you give our listeners a few tips on something they can do today to begin creating
Yeah.
an equitable and inclusive workplace culture?
I love that question, and I would start with where I started. Frankly, you've got to understand your own story and your own experience, and learn about the path that you've had through your career, through your leadership career, work career, whatever it is. What support did you have, and what got in the way? And when you ran into barriers, who or what helped you get through them? So you've got to do some of that reflection and understanding on your own of your own experience.
Mhm.
And then you want to think about, okay, now let me look at this through a different lens. Let me look at the top levels of my organization. Who's missing? Who's not there? And why
Mhm.
do I think that is? And dispel yourself of the myth that there's a lack of potential in the pipeline.
Mhm.
That's not true. There's something that is clogging up that pipeline and preventing people of all kinds from moving through it at the same kind of rates. And so I think that the first steps are to understand yourself and to
Mhm.
understand what's happening in your world. And then there are other great steps about, okay, so what do I do about it? But for
Okay. Yeah,
today, we probably start with that reflection.
that's I think that's a wonderful way to just kind of, because self-awareness and awareness of what's around you through, just intentionally through a different lens, I think will is a good step to get started on that journey for those
Yeah.
who are new to it, especially. So thank you for that. And
Yeah.
so tell me, how do you put more kindness into the world?
I I had a wonderful boss at one point
Mhm.
who had a poster on his wall, and I believe it was called the platinum rule, not the golden rule, but the platinum rule.
Mm-hmm.
And I really resonated to that, and I try to live that way. And what that means is, not only the golden rule is, treat others the way you'd like to be treated, but it's really about treat them the way they want to be treated,
Mm-hmm.
which means I need to understand how they want to be treated. I need to be empathetic to their needs and be able to put myself in their shoes and then treat them in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's kindness. That is exhibiting to other people that you really care about them and you care about what's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to, treat them, act around them in the way that is most important for them.
No, that's great. I mean, I have had a similar experience early in my leadership journey where, a woman at the interview, that she was a director, and she said to me, I'm going to give you everything you need to be successful. All you need to do is take advantage of what I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you every learning opportunity, put you in the room with people that will help you to grow. And she did just that. And I always say, no one in high school or grade school will ever believe that I'm like on a mic or anything because I was like really shy. So, so that type of support really helps you to become what you need to become or what you want to become. And it helps you to grow through leadership and tackle things that you did not think you could tackle. So,
Right.
it's good to have some people like that in your life as you're
Absolutely.
coming through. Yes.
Absolutely, it
So
is.
Jennifer, thank you so much for being here. Can you just tell us a little bit about what you're up to and what you have coming up?
Yeah, so I've got several workshops and projects with clients that are both around women's leadership and around creating equitable, inclusive cultures. I was thinking to that question of, what could I invite people to who are listening to your podcast? And there are, we're bridging Black History Month, and then we're coming into Women's Month and International Women's Day, and so there's some things that are sort of blending around the two of those. In particular, there is a two-part session that the UN Women North Carolina branch is going to co-sponsor with the Center for Creative Leadership, and I'll be doing a keynote on March 8th. And then there's another component on March 16th that people can tune into, and that I believe the Center for Creative Leadership is putting the advertisement out for it later this week. And then on March 25th, Women for Economic and Leadership Development, which is an open registration conference online, of course, as everything is right now.
Yes.
That I'll be doing a presentation there. And then coming up beginning in April, I co-authored a book called Kick Some Glass, 10 Ways Women Succeed at Work on Their Own Terms. My co-author and I are working on an online course that we're putting together. And so we will launch that probably in April, it looks like. So that'll be a 3-part course as well. So we welcome people to join that. So stay tuned. I'll share all of this on my LinkedIn. That might be a good way to find it.
And to that point, how can people connect with you, get in touch with you, in case they want to learn more about your work or work with you?
Well, the most direct way is through email, and I'm at Jennifer@leapandinspireglobal.com. I've got the website, www.leapandinspireglobal.com. Then through LinkedIn, look for me under Jennifer Martineau. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram. I'm a little bit less frequent there, but Twitter is at JW Martineau, and Instagram is at Jennifer Martineau 1, the number 1.
There's so many social media platforms. Like, and then the Clubhouse came. I'm like, I don't even know what that is really.
And Platinum Rule, I want to meet people where they are, but there is a lot.
Yeah, they're in a lot of places. Exactly. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for joining us today. I really appreciated the conversation, and I hope that people who are listening, will be able to take advantage of some of those upcoming events that you mentioned. So thank you so
Thank you,
much for
Carolyn.
being here. So until next time, be better today than yesterday. Be better tomorrow than today. Bye for now.